Welcome to Stories We Love. Stories We Love is about stories we love, where we get to talk to and interview different people that are doing remarkable good things for the world, hopefully to inspire you to do other good things in the world and, to warm your heart and open your mind and give you ideas and all that good stuff. Today, I get the grand pleasure of speaking with Joel Salatin, who runs PolyFace Farms, and you're somewhere in the East Coast. I forgot where.
I'm in Virginia.
Awesome. Well, thank you. First, do you want to just describe why you call your farm Polyface?
Sure. So when we named the farm Polyface, we were thinking of uh, numerous elements. Of course, poly is the Latin prefix for many. So
It's
it's the
very
farm of
catchy.
many faces.
Yeah.
Many faces. A polygon is a many-sided figure. So it's the farm of many faces, and we knew our objective was that it would be a farm with many people, many enterprises, a lot of diversity, plants and animals, a lot of different kinds of intersecting ecologies, riparian, forestal, open land, and so it was all that poly that we wanted to capture. So we Dad used to say we're not just two-faced, we're many-faced.
I love it. I love it. That's great. So you guys so you said biodiversity, that's important to you. Can you talk about why your farm might be different than a conventional farm?
Oh, sure. So most farms are fairly single enterprises. They've got, cows or dairy or apple or orchard or, corn or soybeans or something. But here we have multiple animals. We have cows, chickens, pigs, turkeys, rabbits, sheep, ducks, and so it's a lot of different kinds of animals. And interestingly, they are not confined in structures. They are on pasture. We move them every day or almost on pasture to new areas. So the whole idea here is to mimic the way nature's template works. What are the patterns in nature, and mimic those patterns in nature. We don't use any chemical fertilizers. We run on a carbon economy. So we view vegetation as the ultimate solar collector, and so the way soil is built is with decomposing organic matter, decomposing vegetation. That's how soils have been built throughout history. And so rather than dumping on 10-10-10 chemical fertilizer, petroleum based, we're using in situ biomass, solar generated biomass, to run large scale composting, to run the program. And then the moving the animals around is to mimic that choreography that you see on the Serengeti, or the bison on the American plains. In nature, animals are moving, mobbing, and mowing. The three M's: moving, mobbing, mowing. And so we use electric fence, portable electric fence, with chickens and turkeys and all sorts of things, cows, to be able to move them on a fresh spot every day. So they get their bedding changed, and they get a fresh salad bar. We call it salad bar beef. They get a fresh salad bar every day, and so there's no corn, there's no feed, there's no corn to the cows. It's no feedlot. And it's a very, very different a different metal. And the beauty of this is that, so many times we hear this thing: well, if you're going to be environmental, you've got to sacrifice the economics, and if you're going to be economical, you've got to sacrifice the environment. And what I'm here to explain is you can have both environment and and economics on both things, but you have to be you can't just make little deviations from the conventional industrial model. You have to make 180-degree shifts. And when you do that, then all the pieces fall into place.
Okay, first, I really love, this thing about biomimicry, or how you kind of key into the mind of nature, because nature is a great teacher. It really shows us so much. And one of the things, and if you would confirm this, because I don't want to repeat something that's inaccurate, but one of the things that I learned was that when you have healthy soil, so it doesn't have conventional fertilizers or pesticides or things like that, when you have healthy soil, so it's pretty organic, it's pretty biodiverse. First of all, it has a microbiome, just like we have in our bellies, on our skin, in our mouth, in our sex organs. These microbiomes are so key for immune system. And the microbiome in the cell, from what I understand, just correct me if I'm wrong, the microbiome in the cell, when it's there, I mean in the soil, when it's there, the soil is able to sequester both carbon and water, so it mitigates the possibility of drought and helps with global warming. And then the native grasses, as they grow up, they get something to do with the photosynthesis, and it creates, it ameliorates methane. So you get a huge, I think 100 times more methane amelioration than a ruminant like a cow or a goat or a pig or other animal that you mentioned can make. And so the genius to me of nature is so edifying and so exciting. And so I love that you're mimicking it and utilizing it. And so if somebody wanted to do, let's say they were doing a conventional farm, which is understandable, you know, because you get all these subsidies and you get things like that, and it's kind of easier to probably grow one thing or two things than it is to grow, you know, a biodiverse amount of things and change your creatures' places every day. But if somebody was wanting to do a conventional farm to go to a more biodiverse and organic and regenerative farm, what's the benefit they would get, and then how would they make that transition? Do you know?
All right. Well, you unpacked a lot there, and first of all, let me say that you really do. Congratulations. You get the big picture of the microbiome. Yes, one double handful of healthy soil has more beings in it than there are people on the face of the planet. And so imagine the amount of trade, commerce, decision making that's going on. Yes, the sentience that's pulsing in us and all around us, that is making decisions, spontaneous decisions. And that's why life is fundamentally biological and not mechanical. And so what we've done in our Western reductionist, disconnected, parts-oriented, linear reductionist thinking Western culture is that we.
But we don't mean any insult if you're doing that. But go ahead.
It is that we have viewed life fundamentally as mechanical, rather than this whole dynamic, spontaneous, biological. And when you do that, you tend to simplify it rather than appreciate the complexity. You tend to disrespect its physiological expression, i.e., you know, here on our farm, we actually ask, how do you honor the pigness of the pig? How do you respect the pigness of the pig? Because we believe that you cannot have happy people unless you have happy pigs. If you do violence and disrespect to life, you don't suddenly come out the other end of that chain with a happy, respected life. If we're going to respect the merriness of Mary and the Karenness of Karen, it starts by respecting the pigness of the pig. I mean, this is not trite. This is foundational, worldview stuff, paradigm stuff, and so we dare to ask that kind of question. And so for the for the soil, yes, you're exactly right. The soil is supposed to have all this biology in it, and your methane thing, I loved it, because most people have no clue that this is happening. So you can add this to your little portfolio. The bacteria you're looking for there is called methanotrophic bacteria. It just runs off the tongue just like ice cream and chocolate. Okay, methanotrophic, and this methanotrophic bacteria does not exist under just dirt. It doesn't exist under asphalt, concrete, in feedlots, cornfields, soybean fields. It only exists under healthy perennial pastures. And you're exactly right. That bacteria, when it's healthy, will suck down, draw down the methane from more than 1,000 cows per acre. Well, nobody's ever going to put 1,000 cows on an acre. And so that's what sucked down from the bison and from the dinosaurs and from the wildebeest on the Serengeti. All right. And think about the herbivores around the planet, and that's what sucks this down. So your question is just so beautiful when you then you point out the shall we say the majesty and almost the mystery of this entire biological portfolio. And so your question is, a conventional farmer, what are the benefits of viewing agriculture from a nature honoring standpoint, from a biological standpoint versus a mechanical standpoint? And so I view the basic fallacy of the mechanical standpoint viewing the life is that what you do is you simplify everything, and by simplifying you automatically create problems. You create externalized costs. So you simplify chickens to a Tyson chicken house, and now you have a pollution problem and an odor problem and a disease problem. Okay, you simplify plants to nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus chemical fertilizers, and what you have is a dead zone the size of Rhode Island in the Gulf of Mexico. You simplify bugs to a neurological pesticide problem, and now you have three-legged salamanders and infertile frogs and no songbirds. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. You see what I'm getting at? And so what happens is when you dishonor and you do this disrespect to the majesty of life has its own balance sheet, and it begins to bounce back. I don't know how old you are. You look about 15, but
I love you. No, I'm older, but go ahead.
but I will tell you, Karen, anybody older than 50 today, those of us old geezers, we can remember, not you, but us old geezers, we can remember a day when moms would get together for birthday parties for their little tykes, and they just had a birthday party. They didn't spend 5 conference calls a week before asking who's got a food allergy to this and a food allergy to that, food allergy to the other thing, and so all of this is nature's balance sheet trying to right a tilting ship that has tilted sideways from a mechanical, simplistic approach. And so the benefits to recognizing, appreciating, and then mimicking these natural patterns is that instead of being a petroleum addiction, a drug addiction, a heavy mechanical addiction, a concrete addiction, an energy addiction, instead you are liberated from those addictions. And the words that we use are things like symbiosis and synergism, and you get this 1 + 1 = 4, and you get this abundance that comes from natural things. So finally, you ask me, well, how do you make the transition?
Well, can I say one thing first? Because I bet also a benefit.
It's your show. You can say anything you want to.
Thank you, Joel. You're so sweet. The other thing I would think, if you're a conventional farmer and you're wanting to make this transformation into something that is more aligned with nature, more respectful of nature, more caring of nature, I would imagine, one, you, your family, your workers would be healthier because you're not using toxic chemicals like Roundup, which has been shown to potentially and has been Roundup has lost in court cases against people who claim non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So, so they're not going to be touching, breathing, walking through places with toxins. So family, pets, workers, everybody involved, and the farms, guests to the farms, are going to be healthier, I would think, or have the capacity to be healthier as they detox
Well,
things.
there's simply less risk of toxin. And so, yeah, on our farm, we don't have any skull and crossbones, on a door anywhere.
Right.
In fact, we don't even use anything on the soil that you can't eat. I mean, in certain quantities. But I mean, you probably wouldn't want to eat. You can eat compost, but you probably wouldn't want to eat it as your whole diet.
Right.
My point is, it's not going to harm you.
Right.
If you ingest some compost or some seaweed or some fish emulsion or something like that. And so, yes, you're right. It is a much safer. It's a humanly safer place to be. And so the transition, the hardest transition is actually not the physical transition of what we're going to do in the modality of our fields. The transition is between the ears. That's when we talk about climate change, the hardest climate change is between the ears. And if we can get that climate to change, then everything else tends to fall into place, fairly directly.
Yeah, I love that. And I have to say, some of the conventional farming, and again, if you're doing that, don't take this in the wrong way, but it's kind of like, over history, there's been an objectification of women, let's say. And women in certain times, and maybe even currently, I don't know for sure, are just used for sexual pleasure or something like that, or to be mothers or something, where there's not a respect of the actual being that is a woman. And, we call the earth Mother Earth. And so to me, it's kind of like conventional farming is almost akin in my mind, and this is probably really bad, but it's almost akin to like a kind of forceful taking, a pulling out of what they want without the giving back, without the love, without the care, without the cherishing and the romance and the treasuring that is so important. And that when you view nature, for me anyway, when I see nature, and I live in nature right now, when I see nature, I just want to like kiss every tree, every bug, every flower. It's just so indicative of diversity, proliferation, innovation, creativity. I mean, it's mind-blowing. It's awe-inspiring. When you look at just the kind of bugs there are in the world, it's just
Right.
awe-inspiring. Or the kind of sea creatures, or this kind of trees. I mean, it's just the abundance, the proliferation, the biodiversity. It's so crazy, which also goes back to how important it is to embrace and to honor and to care for and respect the dignity of all races, of all sexual orientations, of all abilities and disabilities. It all seems like it's such a part of it because nature really gives you that example. I've just used nature in my own life as a teacher of like why it's so important to accept somebody with a different mindset than you, or with a different skin tone, or with a different religious or a different ability or disability or language or culture or anything. Just the diversity is so rich in nature. It seems like it's such a teacher of why we need that.
Yeah, well, that's one reason why there's a completely different habitat and a production model on our farm for the difference between a pig and a chicken. They're completely different individuals, and they have totally different needs, totally different desires, totally different social constructs. Everything is very different. So why would you take both of these and cram them into the same kind of a house like the industry does, without regard to the fact that the pig wants to root, a chicken wants to scratch? They have these innate things, and so you're exactly right. The essential worldview of modern conventional agriculture is that nature is a reluctant partner, that we have to get into a headlock, and I'm gonna make you do this, and I'm gonna make you and so there's this conquistador taking mentality, just like you said. Whereas our view is that nature is actually a benevolent lover that just wants to be caressed in the right place.
Oh, I love that because it's so true, and nature just wants, I mean, you can see it even if you're walking in a city block, in between the concrete squares on the sidewalk, there's almost always something coming up.
Yeah.
I have milkweed here because I like butterflies, and I know there's a big milkweed dearth in the country. And so I have milkweed here, and some of the milkweed, it's in the back on the deck, and it's floated over the house, and it just landed somewhere in the driveway. And now I have milkweed just growing up where there's a little dirt. And what's great is all the people who are delivering things, let's say, or coming here, the post office or Amazon or whatever, none of them have hit this milkweed. It is like right in the middle of the driveway. They're just so aware that it's important, and it makes me, I just want to cry with how sweet people can be, when nature has taken hold of some part that seems impossible, but is flourishing there.
Yeah. This whole discussion reminds me of of what we're seeing now with, food supply chains. And of course, everybody's going bonkers over the price of fertilizer that's gone up, 400% because, oh no, the Russians produce all this chemical fertilizer and wheat, from Ukraine and the war, and all this. And the cool thing about the way we farm is we don't need any of it. We don't use any of it.
Right.
Our fertility runs on solar energy through photosynthesis in plants that make trees and grass, and so ultimately the industrial fragility, for whatever a long my lifetime, I've been accused of being inefficient. Oh, making compost versus buying chemical fertilizer. It's inefficient. Moving chickens around on the pasture is inefficient. Just put them in a house. Turn up the thermostat and is all as well. But when things like this happen, suddenly this alleged efficiency starts to crumble, starts to break down, and it actually becomes fragile. And so what's interesting now is that we're hearing in very high levels of discussion the word resilience as much as the word efficiency, and there's kind of this dawning epiphany in people that, wow, if we don't first have resilience, there's nothing to be efficient about, because if we don't first survive, there's nothing to be resilient, there's nothing to be efficient about. And so it's really, really an exciting time in our farming experience to have this kind of circle around. And I feel a little sometimes like Cinderella. I've been this ugly stepsister in the ashes all the time, and suddenly oh wow, we need to be doing this so we can extricate ourselves from the centralization and the fragility of the industrial food system. It's quite an awakening, actually.
Yeah, and when you were talking about the addiction, the addiction to chemical fertilizers or to chemical pesticides, when part of the reason people have addictions to begin with is because they're looking outside of themselves in order to feel better. They have some kind of disharmony within themselves, and they need some external substance to calm them or to make them feel connected or to feel loved. And when you have an addiction in the way of conventional farming, it's a similar thing. You have to find something, you have to go get the conventional fertilizer from Russia, or you have to get the GMO seeds and then spray your farm with the Roundup because you're trying to make sure. And then you see all the butterflies dying, but you don't care. Who cares, right? It doesn't matter because you've got this addiction, and the addiction has to be fed. And part of the thing that I was understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like, if you have the GMO seeds, you're not allowed to get the seeds that your plants make. You have to keep buying seeds every year. So it's a cost, $100,000 a year or something, maybe, for somebody to buy new GMO seeds every year. Whereas when you have a biodynamic, regenerative, organic farm, the seeds are just there. They're just part of the.
Yeah. When you have true true varieties, what are known as open pollinated varieties, that then you can keep those seeds and they plant true. But yeah, most of the GMO seeds, so they germinate. They germinate, but if they germinate, so a germinate is when a seed sprouts. Okay, that's what we call seed sprouting. So sometimes they germinate, but they don't germinate true. It's some sort of real weird, dwarfism or some aberrant, crazy thing. So there's no true about it. So yeah, you're exactly right. The addiction to all these external things, then it ends up enslaving farmers to the corporate, the agri-corporate world, what I call the agri-industrial complex, like the military-industrial complex, the agri-industrial complex, and so farmers then just become almost like colonial serfs in this big this big wheel that continues to turn. And so that's one of the big reasons why biology, again, as energy gets expensive, and of course all of the chemicals are petroleum based,
Right.
and so when we tip over, when we transition to a biological production model, suddenly that biology does not depend on petroleum to thrive, and so suddenly that reduces our dependency, and we can do a lot more on ourselves. We can generate our own fertilizer, and the biodiversity tends to protect us from the bugs and the insects. We run, for example, we run laying chickens behind the cows to mimic like the egret on the rhino's nose, the bird herbivore relationship, and the chickens scratch through the cow pies and eat out the fly larvae, spread out the cow pies on the pasture to make them go farther, to spread them out. So you get fertility enhancement, you get a biological cow sanitation, and you get eggs in addition. And so that's where you start getting the symbiosis and synergy, when you start complexing the relationships. Nature is never segregated. Nature is highly integrated.
Right.
It's highly integrated. And so, when we integrate, we have chickens and cows in the same field, turkeys and sheep in the same field. The conventional mind goes bonkers. Oh, aren't you concerned about cross-contamination and disease and all that stuff? Say, no, we don't even have a vet bill because all this diversity is confusing the pathogens, and confused pathogens are a good thing.
I love that. I love that. I actually have a painting I did with a hippo with an egret on it when I was in Africa, because I just loved, the symbiosis of the egret. I think you were picking up the bugs. I painted it, picking
Yes.
up the bugs from the rhino, or the hippo, and then the hippo's getting relief because the bugs are there, so it's like just such, the beauty when you go to places like Africa or someplace where it's not developed as much, and where you see, the biodiversity. The wildebeests are with the springboks, and then the springboks are with the, it's certain birds, and it's just like, it's amazing the way it goes. And then also the other thing that happens, at least in Africa, that I saw, is that first, if somebody goes down, or somebody's sick, like one of the animals, first will come, the carnivore animals, and they'll eat most of it, and then the vultures are waiting, and then they eat the bones, and it's just, and the hyenas eat the bones, and it's just so interesting. I might be wrong about this because I was there a long time ago, but it's so fascinating how, and then the bugs come up and they eat the rest of it, and so it's just so fascinating, the cooperation between the species on how to clear this dead being, and make it so that it's part of the environment, so that it nourishes all these different species.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. I want to say the consideration of nature.
Right. Yeah.
Just that there's a tree that takes in our carbon dioxide and gives us oxygen. Nature is so thoughtful and so well designed and so considerate that it's just, to me, it's just like, wow, mind blowing,
Yeah, it sure is. When you were there, did you ever see an actual like a lion or attack? Did you actually see an attack where a predator took down prey?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
did. Wow, that would be something to see. I mean, I've seen stuff here. You know, a dog get a groundhog or something like that, but nothing as whatever dramatic as
Yeah, it
as
was
a.
interesting too. But also, one time there was a little baby springbok, which are the cutest. They look like little deers, but they lift their little bums at the, when they're walking. They're so.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
one of the springboks was sort of not either. He or she was really young, or infirm in some way, like a little
Uh,
wobbly. And
right. Right.
it was they have a huge herd of springboks, and these I think it was lions were,
Lion.
crouching, getting ready to attack. And what happened is, I don't know how they figured it out because the grown-up springboks were far from this little one and she was lagging behind. All of a sudden, all the springboks come back and they just start going towards the lions, and the lions are backing up because these guys, they're going to protect their little one, So
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
really beautiful too, So
Yeah.
one more thing, when I was in Africa, there was a video going around. It was like a viral video on the news, and there was a crocodile had grabbed a springbok and put the springbok under the water in a lake, and the springbok's head was still above water. It had been bitten, but it was still alive. And the springbok's head was under the water. So the springbok starts to try to get out. That the crocodile likes the food to be marinated, I guess, or tenderized in the water a little bit. So the springbok starts trying to swim out, and it's injured. A hippopotamus sees this springbok, opens its mouth, and the springbok gets inside, and the hippopotamus swims the springbok back to shore and then nudges the springbok out of its mouth and then nudges it. And the springbok turns around and looks at this hippo, and you see this communion happening. And then this springbok walks off. It's probably not going to last that long just because it's injured.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the care of the
Uh,
hippo who
and,
didn't
and
notice springbok, like, is
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, and so the hippo, you watch the hippo turn around and say to the crocodile, "Take that, old croc." What you're describing here. There is certainly violence in nature. I mean, nature is there's you know to me that one of the most pretty pictures of all this is a compost pile, which takes things that were alive, they die, they decompose, and then they come anew as fertility
Right.
for new plants and new things. And so that's this um, you know uh, life, death, decomposition, regeneration, life, death, decomposition, regeneration. It's this beautiful thing. So in nature, what you're describing beautifully, in nature there is no landfill. There's no waste in nature. Every single thing becomes a food source for a symbiotic relationship behind it um, that eliminates all waste. And boy, that's we could learn a little bit about that in our Western living, couldn't we? Imagine if we could live waste free.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be neat?
Let's do that. Yeah. Yeah. When I was in Ecuador, I've traveled a lot. When I was in Ecuador, I was staying at this place called La Selva, and it's in the middle of the jungle. And it was a place where scientists did research, and then the tourists paid them basically to take them on trips, like hikes and different things, and explain whatever they were researching about. So we were on this walk, and because I speak Spanish, I was talking to the guys who were kind of at the end of the walk, who weren't necessarily the scientists, but they knew the jungle, like the back of their hand. And I remember them showing me these leaf, I forget what it's called, a leaf something ant, a leaf. Anyway, these ants were holding these pieces of a tree, pieces of a leaf over their head, and they were walking in a line. And what the guy was telling me was that those leaves are from a specific tree, and the ants are always near that tree. And then they take the leaf and they create this thing, it was just like this intricate, it was so, my mind was blown with just the intricacy of how considerate nature was. And it's just leaf cutter ants. That's what they are. Leaf cutter ants. And the little ants, they were so clear on their mission, and the tree was so clear to give itself to the ant. And I didn't get to see the end result, but it was just still understanding the majesty, and the ants looked like they were having a parade, because they're holding these little leaves above their head, and it was just so magical.
Yeah, well, think about the intricacy of, for example, a hive of honeybees. I mean, that's just mind blowing. I mean, think about like around here we tap maple trees for sugar maples for maple syrup, and so in the spring when the sap is running, if a hard wind comes up, the tree stops giving sap in case a branch falls off, so it can send sap to the wound. If a branch breaks off, it can send sap to the wound, because that's like the bloodstream of the tree, and it can send sap up to the wound to help it. And when the wind stops, then the sap starts going in your bucket again. If that's not sentience, I don't know what is. The fact is that all of this is pulsing with sentience, and so juxtapose the way you and I have just described things. Juxtapose that with 1837, Justus von Liebig, the Austrian chemist, wows the world and basically takes over the world by telling the world that all of life is simply a rearrangement of nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. That's all life is. And of course, that launched the whole chemical fertilizer revolution.
Wow, I had no idea.
His heart was in the right place. He was concerned about starvation. We're all going to starve, we're not going to grow enough food. So he was trying to solve fertility problems, but he was doing it from a completely mechanical, simplistic, with no paying no homage, if you will, paying no homage to the kind of sentience, decisions, and trades and commerce that are going on. When I think about the soil, I'm thinking about a little microbe coming down through the root, the root, little microscopic hairs from the roots, and it encounters another microbe coming from one of the other rooms of the cathedral. I look at the soil like a cathedral. It's a bunch of aggregated rooms, and some rooms have oxygen, some have water, some have some mineral, a little bit of boron, and you've got these microbes that are kind of sloshing through this marshy cathedral, and so they meet it. They have this encounter, and a little microbe said, "Hey, I've got two little units, atoms of boron here in my pocket. Could I exchange them for your polysaccharide that you got from photosynthesis, and we'll make a trade." So the plant gets boron, and the microbe gets some sugar, and that's the real life. That's what's happening under our feet. It's not just dirt. It's not just inert material that we intravenously chemical NPK into and grow a crop. No, it's much more intricate than that. And so what happens then, when we do simplify, what we have is very simplified, sterile food, and our whole nourishment system is this way.
Right.
We should be eating food, for example, that's living food. If you take cheese from a tube and squirt it on your table, you can make a blob walk away from it for a year, and that pseudo cheese is still there a year later. But you take real cheese, put it on your table, in 2 days it gets all fuzzy, and in 4 days it sprouts legs and walks off the table. The fact is, if your food will not decompose, it probably won't digest.
Right. And that's so true. I think of all of nature as my church, if you will. Whether it's the ocean or the forest or the jungle or rainforest, there's just so much edification that comes. And yes, you see like if you're in a rainforest, you'll see competition. You know, one plant will try to get higher than another plant to get to the sun. And then that other plant will work to get up there and it will try to get to the sun. And so there's all this competition, but then there's this other group, like the gingers and the orchids, who don't need that much sun, who like to stay under the shade of these competitors, you know? So it's just like, you're just like, wow, it's just crazy brilliant. The brilliance, the innovation, the again, the proliferation, you know. And when you're talking about you know, the simplicity, there is a simplicity to life in the sense that, like biological life, in the sense that it's always working. Like when you were talking about trees, the maple trees, trees have, you know, they communicate with their roots, and then there's a mycelium or a mushroom network. Right. Like it's,
that's
right. It's a nervous system. It's like a brain under the ground, you know. And flowers, this is probably totally you know, it's totally politically incorrect, but flowers, they have their root system in the ground, and then their sex organs, the root system in the brain, their sex organs up for everybody to look at and see. And I'm like, you know, like that's just so interesting, you know. How does it work like that? Like that's so cool, you know. And then you see how, like with the milkweed, for example, every seed of the milkweed is covered with this soft stuff, and the seeds just proliferate everywhere around you. And I'm amazed at like all the places the milkweed is growing. And I think that's because nature values butterflies. And you're not gonna, you need to have milkweed stations, kind of, you know, like water stations for creatures. You know, you need milkweed for the butterflies. And you know, just the fact that milkweed goes everywhere and it floats like little parachutes carrying the seeds. Nature must really value butterflies.
Yeah, well, it also values just overall, it values abundance.
Yes.
And in a world that where we hear scarcity themes, we hear scarcity themes every day. We're going to run out of this, run out of that, run out of the other, and this is not a scarce place.
Right.
Let me just give you an example. On our farm, for example, by moving the cows every single day, we are getting 3 to 4 times the production per acre of the average in the county. You know, the average in the county is 80 cow days per acre. We get, you know, 300 or better.
Wow, that's so amazing.
And we haven't planted a seed or bought a bag of chemical fertilizer in 60 years. And so just imagine if the neighbors did that, and if their neighbors did that, if the whole county did that, and the whole state did that, we can't imagine the amount of production that would be possible.
Right, the abundance.
No, yes, that's right. That's right. The abundance that's possible. And it can be done without a single Tyson chicken house, without a single Smithfield hog factory, without a single polluted river. And when we have that much production, we have that much biomass diversity in the fields. We call these perennial prairie polycultures. When we have that much, guess what also proliferates? Moles and voles and field mice and spiders up the wazoo. We just, a couple of years ago, we participated with the Smithsonian Institution in a 2-year, what they called a working landscape study. And they developed 5 benchmarks of environmental integrity. One of them was pollinators. And I think we were the only site of 30 in the state where they found all 8 known species of bumblebees that exist in Virginia, here right on our farm. And it's because of this mosaic. So instead of having a monocrop and a monoculture, what you have is a quilt pattern. Right. So that there's always something in bloom. There's a field. Not every field is blooming all the time, but there's always proximate blooms everywhere. And so there's always something for pollinators. And it's such a magnificent provision of abundance. And but you know, mainline conventional farming, they don't have discussions like this. You know, it's how much corn can you grow per acre? You know, how many pounds of beef did you put on per acre? You know, it's they're very linear, myopic, I would say, objectives, very short-term myopic objectives rather than long-term. Can we increase the commons? As a result of my footprints here are the commons being soil, air, water, social interaction. Is the commons accelerated or increased as a result of me putting here, my being here? And that's a very different view than the kind of conquistador exploitation. Let's take what we can now and survive till tomorrow.
Yeah, that feels really, really wise on your part, and I love that you got all 8 bumblebees there. That's just beautiful. Of your state. And I agree, if we could get more and more farms to look into how to become regenerative, biodynamic, organic, those kind of farming, like with California, we have a lot of conventional farms, but we also have a lot of organic farms. And in the conventional farms in California, people are freaking out because they require more water because the soil doesn't sequester water. They require more, they have too much methane if they've got, animals there. And then the methane, people are complaining because as they drive by or as they live by, the methane is overwhelming.
Yeah, you smell it.
And so if we could inspire those farmers to recognize, and it's kind of like, it's interesting because this is a different subject, but the same principle. Many years ago, there were midwives and doulas that helped when women were pregnant, and they helped them through their pregnancy, and they got to know the family, and they helped them have children out of the hospital. Now we have children in the hospital, and what's happening is, they get C-sections, or they get, it's just, there's drugs put into the woman's spine, to help her process, and babies aren't as healthy now. There's more problems with iatrogenic, which means death by medicine, doctors, iatrogenic things. It's like high up there in the list of things that kill people. It's higher than most diseases, is the iatrogenic mistakes that happen. And so it kind of sounds like almost, and I'm saying this with reverence to you and not trying to put you into a weird place, but like you're almost like the midwife to nature, because you're taking the fertility of nature, you're taking the abundance of nature, and you're not sticking something up the spine of it, that's going to knock them out or make it block them from feeling the exquisiteness of birth. You're actually working with nature in a way, like you're a doula, you're I don't mean to say that, but it's just like, it's so, we see it in such a way of like, nurturing, caring.
Well, we view ourselves as an ecological masseuse. And so we're not here to exploit. We are here to nurture. And the history of humans to agriculture is a pretty hurtful, it's a pretty hurtful thing, but the answer is to take this intellect and these hands that have hurt and use them to heal.
Yeah,
that's the idea. And so our goal here is that we would provide a rendezvous, a haven place, that when people feel hopeless and helpless, we will offer a haven of rest where they can get hope and help. And that's throughout the spectrum: spiritual, emotional, physical, mental. We want our little moniker here on our little customer bags is healing the land one bite at a time. What we want people to see when you sit down at a table and you look at that food on your plate, squint your eyes, look through the food. What kind of a farmscape do you see on the other side of that food? And and to realize every one of us, every time we take a bite, we are making a landscape that our grandchildren will inherit. We're making a landscape that is either on a trajectory toward healing or a trajectory toward harm. And so just think about that with intentionality and realize, it's a kind of serious responsibility, but the second part of this is just, wow, I'm overwhelmed by the honor and the privilege of being able to heal the landscape, to touch the landscape. Even if I never grow a plant and never grow a flower, and I'm living in a Manhattan condominium and everything has to, come in the door, I can still vicariously, intentionally create that landscape by the decisions that I make. And that's an awesome responsibility, but it is an incredibly embracing privilege and honor to be able to be a part of that.
I love that so much. And also, I think if somebody wants to lose weight, one of the reasons, this is just my own theory, I haven't tested, it's not peer reviewed. Nobody's done a study on it that I know of, but my instinct is, because I eat pretty much all organic. I don't really eat anything that's not organic on purpose, and I don't even hardly go to restaurants anymore unless it's like an organic restaurant or they have some things that I like to eat that are organic. And what's great is a lot of restaurants in my neighborhood do have organic salads and organic things, from farms that I know because I've met them at the farmers market, so but what I was going to say is that I think a lot of people eat, when you have unhealthy soil, there's no nutrients in the soil.
Right.
So when you're using conventional farming, people are eating food, but there's no nutrients in the food. And when you're eating biodynamic, regenerative, organic farming, there's nutrients in the soil, which means there's nutrients in the food. And I believe, this is, again, my theory, that part of the reason people keep gaining weight in America is one of the heaviest, most obese places, and obesity is a big, huge reason why people get sick with other diseases, is because they're eating food that has no nutrients. And so their body is like, give me more, give me more, give me more, because you don't get the actual nourishment that you need. Whereas when you eat food that is all, organic and regenerative and biodiverse and all of that stuff, when you're eating it, it's alive. You feel it. It tastes better. And then you're satisfied more as well, because first of all, it tastes so good. So your sensations are good. And then you're not getting the toxins in your body, and you're getting the nutrients that your body actually craves. So that's my theory. If you want to lose weight, eat organic, biodynamic and regenerative.
Yeah. Well, we started at the top of the program talking about the microbiome. And of course, if there's one thing that everyone who writes about this and studies the microbiome, if there's one thing they agree on, it's just generally, you need more diversity in your microbiome. I mean, that's like the single most common thing. And Americans eat so little variety. If you look at the Native Americans, the Aborigines in Australia, I mean, they ate like 2,500 different foodstuffs in a year, or in a couple of years, all through the cycle. Go back and get Dolly Madison's recipe book, or Martha Washington. Back in colonial days, get their recipe books, and half of the stuff in there you've never heard of, because they didn't have a supermarket, and they had to grow currant berries that came in from May 15th to June 20th, and then raspberries came in, and then blackberries came in, and then pawpaws came in, and it's full of all this stuff that we've never heard of. And of course, the animals, the eggs, the poultry, the meat was all from a very, very biodiverse. It wasn't just fed corn and soybeans. They were out on pasture, and they were eating this diverse salad bar that then filled their tissue with all sorts of vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. So one of the quickest ways to diversify your microbiome is to eat eggs and poultry and meat from animals that are out on a biodiverse pasture, picking up all the forbs and the herbs and the all the things on the pasture. I'll mention one other thing there's an outfit called the Bionutrient Association, and they're actually making an instrument that can read, that can give nutrient readings. And they've only done a couple of things so far, but one was a carrot. And what they found was the difference. So they went to a couple of different, people who grow carrots in the store, and they measured the nutrient density. And what they found was even shocking to them. They knew there'd be a difference. They didn't think it was going to be this much, that you would have to eat the worst carrot compared to the best carrot. You would have to eat like 30 pounds of the worst carrot to get the same nutrients that were in one carrot of the best carrot. There's that much spread and diversity in nutrient density.
And that's why I think people get overweight, because they're eating the carrots or whatever it is that doesn't have the nutrients. So they have to eat 30 pounds instead of one.
Yes, that's right. There's no satiation. There's no satiation. You're taking stuff in, but your body's not satisfied, and so it's tending to crave more and more. That's why empty calories, crackers and all that. It's just breakfast cereals, are just empty calories.
Yeah, I mean, and I really make an effort. Like, I don't eat anything unless it's nourishing my body or my brain or both. And usually, if it's nourishing my brain, it's nourishing my body, so I don't eat any empty calories. I don't eat anything that isn't helping me in some way. And that's something that I had to learn, because I was used to be really sick. I used to have narcolepsy and chronic pain and depleted adrenals and bad eyesight, and all my stuff has healed. Everything is healed, not just because of the food, but my mental diet is like really pure. I only love everybody. I love everybody. I like to be kind to everybody. I like to be kind to nature. I like to be kind to everything. Even my pan wasn't getting cleaned, and then I started telling the pan nice things, and then it cleaned up really nicely. And I just believe
stress. Talk to any functional medicine doctor. Stress is the number one cause of chronic sickness and disease. Stress. And so, if during, I don't know if it's politically correct or not, but during COVID, we had the orthodox cure, which was, vaccinations and all that jazz. But I had a different recipe, and my recipe included, exercise, get 20 minutes of sunshine a day, eat unprocessed food, drink 3 quarts of water a day. And one of them was make a list of all the people you hate and forgive them.
I love that.
And just wipe that vengeance and that spirit out of your body. Yeah. And I think that if America had adopted my recipe as much as the vaccine, I think we'd have probably gotten along a little better.
I don't hate anybody anymore. I used to, but I don't anymore. I'm not, like, it's been like 14 years that I've been in this. So I was 1 years old when I started this, but it was like 14 years ago that I started, from now into 2022 now, in case you watch this later, somebody. But I had to practice loving everybody in order to actually heal my body.
Yes.
And and I never, I just had a great time during quarantine. I didn't get upset by anything. Nothing bothered me. I just was like in this relaxed, happy space. And, I did get COVID for 3 days, and all I did was sleep for 60 hours and 72 days, but it was great because I think I was tired. And I didn't care, I actually wanted to have an experience of it, because I knew so many people that were getting COVID, vaccinated and unvaccinated people. Right. I just was like, I wonder what it'd be like. And then boom, I got it. And it was just easy. It was nothing. Yeah. It was nothing. Yeah.
Well, and to my knowledge, neither my wife or I have ever gotten it. We haven't ever gotten it. But you know what? People who know me know that I have this little thing where I routinely drink out of the cow tank where the cows are drinking. I drink out of the cow tank with the cows, and think of all the microbiome. Think of all that stuff I'm getting in my body and my immune system. All those weird bugs. what it does is it gives you more, more balance in your microbiome ship.
Yep. And that's one thing, like people would say to me, if they came over, you want me to wear a mask? I'd be, please don't. And they'd say, why not? And they say, because I want germs. I like bacteria. I like viruses, because we're breathing them in all the time. Our germs, the bacteria, our viruses, everybody's breathing them in all the time. We're sharing DNA with each other. If you're in the same proximity, or if the DNA has floated near you, you've got somebody else's DNA within you that you're breathing in, and there's so much good. I remember I had a professor when I was in high school who said, look at your desk, look at your pen, look at your book, look at the door handle. They're teeming. It's teeming with bacteria, viruses, germs, all that stuff. You guys are pretty much healthy. What's going on? It's not about the bacteria. It's about your immune system. Is your immune system healthy, or is your immune system not? And if your immune system is not, then take care of your immune system and build it back up. If
I've always said, if we could shine an electron microscope at each of us, we would all look like Pigpen in the Peanuts comic strip. Pigpen, the little in a Peanuts comic strip. Pigpen's the guy that's always walking with that big swirl of dust, all around his head, and that's what we would all look like, if we had an electron microscope to show what was around us and on us. That's what we would look like. And my swarm is intersecting with your swarm, and we're connected. It's all and to think that we can somehow disconnect from that is just it's not scientifically accurate.
Yeah, and I will say one other thing. I agree, totally not scientifically accurate. One other thing that I want to say is that there's a feminine way of doing things, and I kind of feel like the way you're doing it is kind of feminine, even though you're a very masculine man. And the feminine, to me, and maybe this is wrong, and maybe this is politically incorrect, and I'm sorry if it is, but the feminine to me is attuned to nature, is attuned to fertility, is attuned to the abundance when it's healthy feminine. And then there's the other side, which is like, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to just take what I want and then go away. And it feels like our culture is moving to more respect of the feminine energy. Because we all have feminine and masculine. It's not like one is better than the other. The masculine is beautiful and I love it. And the feminine is beautiful and I love it. But we've had a history of using a masculine kind of consciousness, which is more mechanical and which is more separating, versus in its negative state, not in its abundant state. When it's in its abundant state, it's beautiful and I love it. But this consciousness of being more aware of the connection that we all are, really who we all are is consciousness. We're all awareness, and plants are awareness, and plants are consciousness, and the air is conscious, and the sun is conscious. This is my theory. But I live it, and I believe it, and I feel it, and I feel this connection with all the stars. People say, "Oh, what sign are you?" And I think I don't care, because I know the stars love us all.
I have a routine that I do. I started it years ago, where I have this little kind of 5-minute theatrical routine where I say that to be an ecological farmer, you have to be a sissy. Because macho men, they want to come in and, man, I immersed in diesel fuel all day, and look, smell this. I got grease, and that's it. That's this macho machismo thing, right? But the spouse says, "Oh, my hunk Frank, yes, I love it, and all that." Whereas I come in, and it's just not masculine and masculine sexy to come in and say, "Oh, I communed with the cows today. I made the pigs happy."
No, I have to say it is sexy and it is masculine. It's sissy masculine, maybe, or it's awareness masculine.
Right.
Because it's so beautiful when someone cares about something beyond themselves.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And when someone, that to me is really sexy. and I'm not trying to do anything. I love your wife. I don't know her, but I support your marriage. I just mean, when you care about somebody beyond yourself, when you care about somebody beyond the bottom
That's
line,
right.
when you
Yes.
care about people, when you care about the environment, it's a different world. It's a different world. It's a world that's benevolent. It's a world that's abundant. It's a world that's embracing you and loving you and you loving it. And it's a different way of going through the world. And that's something I teach that with my clients in general, because so many people have challenges with relationships or money or finances or health.
Mm-hmm.
You learn how to be in connection on a consistent level, almost all those issues go away. And then sometimes you have to clear some subconscious blocks, but still, it's so fun just to watch people become more attuned to themselves, more attuned to nature, more attuned to each other, and to see these relationships start to transform and to become beautiful. I just love you, Joel Salatin. Thank you so much. I really
Right.
appreciate this conversation. I hope whoever you are that is listening, that you're inspired. Maybe send this to a conventional farmer. We love you, conventional farmers, and we think this would be a really more fun way for you to go through farming if you still want to do it, because it could be really beneficial, be more cost efficient, be healthier for you and for your workers and your pets and for your clients, people who your consumers, and also healthier for the oceans and the rivers and the lakes and the ponds, because one of the things that I learned is that one of the biggest causes of pollution is conventional farming in
That's right. The runoff, the chemical runoff. That's right.
the
Well,
topsoil.
yeah. Well, you are delightful, and it's been just a treat to be with you, Karen. And I hope you'll come and see us sometime when you get to the East Coast. Come by and visit. We'd love to show you around.
Thank you so much, Joel. I will do that for sure. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning to Stories We Love. And you can get all the stories we love at storiesweloveshow.com. And I think that's right. I could be wrong, but I'm sure that the person who edits this, who I appreciate so much, will make sure I said it right or put in the right thing so you can see it if you're on YouTube. Anyway, thank you so much, Joel. And thank you to PolyFace Farms. And people can come and get hold of you by polyfacefarm.com or yeah.
Yes. Yes, we have a website, PolyFace Farms. We ship nationally as well. We do a lot of events, educational seminars and things. So please don't be a stranger. Come and see us.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. Take good care of yourself. Thank you for your farm. Thank you, nature. Thank you, everybody. Have a really wonderful rest of your day. Ciao.